Welcome back to another episode of Archie Sonic Character Files as we explore the histories of the inhabitants on planet Mobius. In this episode, we take a look at the history for the leader of the Wolf Pack, known as Lupe the Wolf. Here's an episode I've had on my mind for a while now. I've gone back and forth on the idea on covering her with the Wolf Pack in general, or just give Lupe her own standalone episode. I went with the latter as I felt like there's more than enough material for Lupe, so maybe I'll cover the Wolf Pack another time. I'm sure Lupe is more well known for her origins in Sonic SatAM, but she was able to get more screen time in the comics, so now it's finally time to give her the spotlight she deserves. Lupe would make her first appearance in issue 46. She, along with her pack, stumble upon Sonic and the Freedom Fighters and catch up on things since their last encounter. She also becomes more suspicious of Drago Wolf for constantly leaving their pack without notice. But the chit-chat will have to wait as they move on to helping Sonic and the gang defeat Robotnik during the endgame story arc. After Sally deals with a nasty fall, Lupe and her team help fight off some SWAT bots to help give the Freedom Fighters enough time to escape. She would later be one of the many Freedom Fighters to be captured after the original Robotnik invades Knothole, and later rescued after his death. After this story, she would make a few more smaller appearances, like in issue 52, where Sally alerts everyone about these strange portals to alternate universes that have been popping up recently. And in issue 59, where she joins Sally and other Freedom Fighters for some skydiving. The next time she would have a more active role again would be in the 3-part story, simply called Lupe and the Wolf Pack. With Robotnik gone, the civilians of Knothole have reclaimed Robotropolis, and are now trying to make it Mobotropolis again. Even so, Lupe has grown tired of living there, longing to be reunited with her husband and children in their own home. After being reunited with the Wolf twins Lita and Liko, she decides that it's finally time for the pack to leave and begin their journey to find their families, along with any other surviving members of the Wolf Pack. On their travels, they soon find themselves caught up in a terrible storm. Fortunately, they find an abandoned city and take shelter inside one of the buildings, along with discovering an orphan child named Ariel and her mute sister, Athena. For the next couple of days, they survived living in the abandoned city as the storms continued on. There was some tension with the Wolf Pack regarding the orphans, knowing the Mobians' long prejudice against overlanders, but Lupe is having none of that, as she announces that the orphans will stay with them, and will be taught the ways of their pack. The next time we'd see Lupe again would be in Sonic Super Special issue 11. Lupe and her pack are successful in returning to their home, despite its current dilapidated state that it's in. As they try to find survivors, they are quickly knocked out and taken away. As Lupe regains her consciousness, she is horrified to see that her husband and children have been roboticized, especially when the ringmaster of all this is none other than Sir Charles Hedgehog, now under the control of the second Dr. Robotnik. He threatens to turn her family into scrap metal unless they obey his commands. Defeated, Lupe and her pack are escorted to the roboticizer, where she is the first one of her pack to be given the metallic treatment. But despite being roboticized, Lupe manages to maintain some free will long enough to destroy the device and allow her pack to escape. She stays behind, wanting to be with her family before her free will fades away, while the Wolf Pack leave behind a memorial to honor her sacrifice. This might have been the end for Lupe, but later on she, along with the other roboticized wolves, regained their free will permanently thanks to the power of the Sword of Acorns. Soon after this, Lupe and her family are given a going-away party as they plan to reunite with their pack, but the wolf leader is more concerned about Sir Charles. Sure, he's come to his senses thanks to the sword, but he's been full of regret and actively avoiding her ever since their last encounter. She tells him that she knows that he wasn't acting like himself thanks to Robotnik, stating that the only way he could be forgiven is to forgive himself. And to show that there are no hard feelings, she announces that the party will be dedicated to both her family and Sir Charles. During this time, we also got a prequel story, showing how she met Sonic and Sally for the first time, by teaming up to destroy one of Robotnik's airships that was attacking their home. After that, Lupe was back to showing up for cameos. In issue 123, she was one of the many Robians to be de-roboticized, thanks to the alien species known as BEM. Then later on, Lupe and the Wolf Pack would take part in the Zorda War, joining forces with many heroes and villains to take down a greater threat. And in issue 152, Lupe and the Wolf Pack would be captured by Robotnik's son, Adam, after unleashing the nanites to create the Nanite City. Luckily, Sonic and the Freedom Fighters defeated him, and the Wolf Pack were set free. The next time she would have a more active role again would be in the two-part story Raining Cats and Dogs. During this time, the Wolfpack are relocated to Samerica, where they create the Wolfpack Nation. And by popular request from the pack, Lupe accepts the role of being the nation's Grand Chief. Later on, she invites the Freedom Fighters over to visit and make them honorary members. Despite the fact that Sonic and Sally were the only ones available at that time, she's still happy to be reunited with her old friends. Although she's not that happy with the Felidae neighbors, led by their leader Queen Hathor, especially when both tribes are blaming each other over the disappearance of the ancient Onyx, an ancient gem she uses to initiate members into the pack. She allows Sonic, Sally, and Big the Cat to try and find some answers. When they've been gone for too long, she rounds up a small army to attack the Felidae. Thinking quickly, Sonic asks the leaders about any recent attacks from Robotnik and any locations they tend to avoid. The answer? The old Echidna Ruins, where it has now become a base of operation for some of Robotnik's Dark Egg Legion members. They find out they're the ones who took the ancient Onyx, and to Lupe's disgust, she finds out some of the members of the Wolfpack became legionized after they willingly joined Robotnik. Same goes for Queen Hathor. The wolves and felines join forces to attack the Dark Egg Legion members, until they make a hasty retreat. Although the Wolfpack are not finished with them, Lupe calls off the chase, stating that they're not ready for war just yet. Sally then delivers a speech about how both tribes came together to stop a greater threat, and announces that the gem will remain here, which inspires Lupe to make peace with the Felidae, and Queen Hathor agrees to this. Later that night, as tradition, Lupe uses the ancient Onyx to initiate Sonic, Sally, and Big as honorary members of the Wolfpack Nation. The last time we'd see Lupe would be in the two-part story, Loyalty. During this time, Sally has made the ultimate sacrifice to save Mobius, and is now serving Robotnik in her roboticized state. She's sent out to capture both Lupe and Queen Hathor, and lock them in a cell. Lupe tells the Queen that she can help her reach the vents to escape, and find some help. In return, she must leave behind her royal robes, as they won't be able to fit. Hathor is not a fan of the idea, but she still goes along with this, for the sake of saving both their tribes, leaving Lupe at the mercy of Dr. Robotnik, who plans to legionize the Grand Chief. But that'll have to wait, thanks to Hathor finding Sonic, Tails, Amy, and the twins, Lita and Liko, who invade the stronghold. Robotnik quickly runs off to fire up the Death Egg Mark II, while Drago is tasked to look after the captive. He has some fun taunting his former leader, but Lupe remarks that once she's been legionized, Robotnik will have no use for him. While Drago is startled by this, Liko shows up to give him a good beating, rescues Lupe, and they manage to escape just before the Death Egg launches, with some Legion members chasing after them. But thanks to Sonic's speed, he rushes the Queen into the jungle to call upon the wolves and felines to finish off the Dark Egg Legionnaires. Lupe is happy to see that the Queen maintained her truce during all of this, just as long as she doesn't bring up the sacrifices that the Queen had to make. And before the day is over, she notices the twins want to do more to help Sonic and his friends, so she sends them off to New Mobotropolis for a secret mission. Despite the Super Genesis wave erasing everything about her history and the original Wolfpack, Lupe would play a part in the Shattered World Crisis during the post-Super Genesis wave era of the comics, specifically in issue 277. In this new timeline, Sonic, Sally, and Antoine arrive at Lupe's village in the Thunder Plain Zone, as it was one of the many areas to be affected by Robotnik's reign of terror in the early days. While Sonic and Antoine are kept busy fighting off badniks, Sally tries to comfort Lupe. The poor gal is emotionally scarred from not only witnessing the destruction of her village, but also the death of her father. In her anger, she grabs Antoine's sword to attack some badniks, while trying to stay calm to help her new friends reach a shelter in order to defend any surviving wolves. In the present time, Sonic and the gang once again help save her village from Robotnik's robots, with Lupe assisting Sonic to take down an E-Series robot. We also find out that she's one of the guardians of the Gaia Keys that the Freedom Fighters are looking for, making fake temples and staging small attacks to keep Robotnik distracted, and she does her best to help out when they hear about a Chaos Emerald being close by. After that story, she would make a few small cameos, like in issue 283, where she states that the Wolfpack are ready to help the Freedom Fighters with their next step in saving the world, and making her final appearance in issue 287, happy to know that her friends are successful in restoring the Shattered Planet. And that's the history of Lupe, the Wise Leader. It's very interesting how whenever the comics feature characters from the cartoons, They managed to find ways of doing more with them most of the time, while still remaining faithful to their origins. Lupe was a very minor character in Sonic SatAM, first showing up in the episode Cry of the Wolf, and would later play a much smaller role in the Season 2 finale. But you still get the gist of this character. A brave leader who knows how to protect her people, and is more than willing to help Sonic and Sally join the rest of the Freedom Fighters group to stop a greater threat. As for her time in the comics, she ended up like Ash Mongoose, where sometimes she was important and other times she had small cameos. Her introduction in the comics is very odd, where Sonic and Sally already knew about Lupe and the Wolfpack from the past. Basically, it was just an excuse for them to feature an editor's note saying, "Hope you've watched that one particular episode of Sonic SatAM, because we can't be bothered to explain who these characters are right now." Granted, they would end up adapting the episode in comic form, but that's a story for another time. Even so, I think Lupe was handled well in Archie Sonic. A wolf warrior who was confident, brave, spiritual, and compassionate. The side story focusing on her pack as they travel home may have been brief, but it does give Lupe her moments, showing that she's willing to help anyone who is helpless and lost, no matter what they look like. Makes me wish they did more side stories with her, rather than just giving us a taste on what a Lupe spin-off series could have been like. Her roboticization was both sad and surprising all at once. Sad to see her suffer a tragic fate, but also surprising that, unlike the others who have been roboticized, she's strong enough to maintain her free will after the process, even if it was very brief. I imagine people might be disappointed to find out there is official Sonic media where she got roboticized, mostly because of how short-lived it was, along with the design. For me, I'm kinda mixed about her Robian design. I think it's the eyes that bother me. Then again, her robotic state did play an important role to help Sir Charles get over his grief for being the original inventor of that device, as well as getting to see more compassionate Lupe moments. Aww. Only weird thing about this particular comic is that she suddenly speaks with a Spanish accent. Yeah, despite the fact that was never established before. This is just one of those cases of different writers doing their own things with certain characters. At this point, Ken Penders did all the previous stories featuring Lupe in an active role, while issue 112 was the only time Carl Boilers got to do something with her. Given the fact that Lupe has always been associated with Native American themes, there is some explanation to it. From what I can gather, most Native Americans speak Spanish, and that the name Lupe is a popular Hispanic name, so at least I can understand what Boilers was trying to go for at the time. Also, what is going on with Lupe in issue 123? I know it's just a cameo, but come on, who went and botched up her colors in this panel? Oh, Jason Jensen, of course. When it was Ian Flynn's turn, he did a pretty good job in treating Lupe with respect. Still a brave warrior, still confident in being the leader. Even when she's captured and ready to be legionized, she shows no fear. Even mocking her former member Drago Wolf. And of course sporting that fancy outfit as the Grand Chief. Love the detail in those colors. She might seem a bit gung-ho of going to war when it comes to her neighbors, but then again, the Felidae aren't exactly the most friendly tribe to get along with. And after Sally's speech, she's the first one who's willing to make peace with them. As much as I praise Lupe, I will admit the one thing that she lacks is some backstory. You know, getting to see what her life was like in the Wolfpack before she decided to become a leader. I guess the new timeline sort of fixed that with the flashbacks. Speaking of which, I've always been mixed about how Lupe was handled in the new timeline. She's still a brave leader and all that, but her time was very short-lived. And out of all the redesigns in the post-Super Genesis Wave timeline, Lupe is the only one that really bothers me. I don't know why exactly. Maybe it's just odd seeing her now be roughly the same size as Sally, maybe I'm just too much of a fanboy for her old look, or maybe it's the fact that the new Wolfpack are now made up of forgettable nameless recolors. I think that's the reason. The redesign just looks too plain for my taste. Also, am I the only one who feels like Lupe acts a lot younger here? We've dealt with adult Lupe for so long, and now it just feels like we have teenage Lupe. Overall, I think her new timeline version is fine. Just feels more undercooked in both character and design. Speaking of which, I'm sure people might classify Lupe with that whole "not a Sonic character" tag, with how the artists tend to draw her as a detailed anthro, especially in Stephen Butler's artwork. Honestly, I don't mind it that much. There are definitely much worse ways you can design her as some hyper-realistic anthropomorphic character. But if you want a more decent balance of her old look and the Sega look, then I think Tracy Yardley's artwork really nails it. The only downside is that he only drew Lupe for like a few covers and not the actual stories. But to wrap things up, I've always liked Lupe as a character, and honestly I think she's underrated. She might not have had the most lengthy history in Archie Sonic, but it's nice to know that the writers always treated her with respect for the most part. Truly a mother and a hero to us all. Well, that takes care of this character file, so until then, I got a juice!
We use the threat of a curse to keep out intruders.
Get the fuck out of here!